Recife, the gateway to Lanzarote, and for many their first view of this popular island in the Canarian archipelago. On some days there are more than 50 airliners arriving at this airport. It's been particularly over the last 10 years that the island's popularity has grown. There's something to suit all tastes here, and so it's not surprising that today it has a robust tourist industry which accounts for an important part of the economy. The warm and sunny climate attracts many visitors all year round, and these travellers are some of the nearly 2 million passenger movements which take place through this modern airport each year. For some of these people, however, their only experience of Lanzarote will be the beach. But if you dig a little deeper, there's a rich experience awaiting. At the heart of Lanzarote are the 300 volcanoes which have had such a major effect on the island's more recent history. Today they are no longer active, but provide spectacular scenery for the visitor. A rich tapestry of colours giving the landscape a beautiful lunar-like appearance which cannot fail to impress. The attractive village of Yaitsa is typical of Lanzarote's architectural style. The characteristically green paint on the woodwork and the white walls to protect from the hot sun. The island is alive with its culture as Los Campesinos perform a traditional folk dance in the heart of the wine-growing region. Pottery is another of the island's traditions, and the skills are passed down through the generations. Donna Dorotea, at over 90 years of age, continues in this ancient craft. Canarian wrestling is a sport which also goes back through the centuries to when the islanders had to defend themselves from invaders. These youngsters maintain the customs of this popular island sport. Lanzarote lies on a latitude 29 degrees north and is just 100 kilometers west of the North African coast. The island itself is quite small, measuring just 60 by 20 kilometers. In the last few years, the dusty tracks have been replaced by good metal roads, making the whole island easily accessible. Right at the very heart of the island is the national park of Timanfaya. It is here that the spectacular Fire Mountains rise up and dominate the Lanzarote landscape. On the night of September 1st, 1730, a massive earthquake signaled the eruption of Timanfaya volcano. This was the first of a sequence of eruptions which continued for the next 6 years in this area known as the Fire Mountains. It's said that the eruption could be heard in Tenerife, 250 kilometers away. When the eruption ceased, over 1/4 of the island had been devastated. 23 hamlets in the most fertile part of the island were destroyed and livestock perished. In 1824, there was the second major eruption, although on this occasion causing far less devastation. Today, the lava is not dull and lifeless, but sustains a varied collection of lichens and other fauna. The Fire Mountains give the visitor the opportunity to travel through them and experience the exotic shapes and colors of the Timanfaya scenery. Not only color, but varied texture too, from the hard, dark lava to the light, dusty pecan. It's understandable why film directors have chosen this setting for a lunar landscape. Bearing in mind the close proximity of the Sahara, it's not surprising that the camel should be encountered as a beast of burden. For many years, the islanders used it in the cultivation of the land, but today it provides a unique opportunity to travel away from the roads and really experience the volcanic scenery. Many of these camels, or to be correct, dromedaries, come from the nearby village of Uga, and there they return each evening after their day's work. In the center is a plateau called the Isle of Hilario, named after a shepherd who lived there with only his camel for company. This is one of only 3 places in the Fire Mountains where the temperature rises to 400 degrees centigrade just below the surface. At the Devil's Restaurant, you can enjoy barbecued meat, not cooked over charcoal, but by the geothermal heat coming up through the fissures in the volcanic rock.
Oh, c'est brûlant!
Although it's more than 250 years since the volcanoes erupted, it's remarkable how these hot stones demonstrate the heat that still remains just below ground, or how water, when poured into the earth, boils immediately. On the coast, near where the lava meets the sea, is the small village of El Golfo. The vast stream of molten rock flowed towards the ocean, destroying any village that stood in its way. On reaching the sea, the lava caused it to boil, and in the process formed this wild and rugged coastline known as Los Ayaderos. Near El Golfo is the Green Lagoon. Some say it's green because of the presence of a green mineral called olivine. Another theory is that it's caused by microscopic seaweed growing on the volcanic rocks. Whatever the cause, the effect is quite stunning. Running from Mount Corona to the sea is the longest volcanic tunnel in the world. The Atlantida Tunnel is in all 7.5 kilometers long, and it can be entered here at the Green Caves. This tunnel was caused by the molten lava and magma being forced out underground from the volcano. Caves became an important hiding place for the islanders when they were being attacked by raiders from North Africa in the 16th century. They would stay down here for long periods, using well-disguised entrances to gain access. Yehudi Menuhin once tuned up his violin in this underground concert chamber and was most impressed by its fine acoustics. Near where the tunnel meets the sea, the natural environment has been cleverly enhanced to make a spectacular tourist centre. The island's renowned artist and designer, Cesar Manrique, had the vision to develop this part of the tunnel where the roof had fallen in. Amayos del Agua today stands as a shining example of the way in which tourism and the natural environment have been blended together. One of the notable features here at Amayos is this chamber. Below the cavernous roof is an underground lake, and in it lives a very rare creature. This blind white crab is normally found only deep on the ocean bed, but now lives here in these cold subterranean waters. Further back, the tunnel's been transformed into this underground theatre. Its uses have varied from musical concerts to the Miss Spain contest. On a hill overlooking the old royal and ancient town of Teguise stands the castle of Guanape, and on a clear day has commanding views of the sea in all four directions. The castle was built in 1590 on the orders of Philip II of Spain to protect Teguise from raiding pirates. As soon as the warning of approaching raiders was given, some of the townsfolk would gather up their precious belongings and flee to the Green Caves for sanctuary. Until midway through the last century, Teguise was the capital of Lanzarote, and it is here that the visitor can sense the island's history. There are reminders of the time when the townspeople were in constant fear of invaders. More than once, this small street would have echoed to the groans of the dying, so much so that it's still called sangre, which means blood. Each Sunday, Teguise has a popular market where the visitor can buy local craft products, and at midday the dancers take to the square. The folk music and dancing on the island represents the two main activities of the islanders, fishing and agriculture. The dancers here are dressed in the traditional farm workers' dress, large hats to protect from the hot sun, and on their feet, goatskin sandals. One of the oldest and most prestigious families in Lanzarote was the Spinolas, and here in Teguise it's possible to look around the palace where they once lived. Plushly furnished, it's a good example of the traditional style in which wealthy Lanzaroteans lived. In the courtyard, a natural water filter. In days gone by, this was a very valuable way to make sure that every drop of precious water was usable. Teguise, being such an old town, is rich with custom and tradition. One craft still practiced here is making the traditional Canarian instrument, the timple. This craftsman is one of 2 timple makers in Teguise, and it's very much a family business. Both his father and his grandfather made timples going back more than 130 years. No electric tools are used, just pure craftsmanship, which has been handed down from father to son. Some of the tools and patterns are the same ones that have been used over the years. Musicians from all over the Canaries come to Teguise for their timples, with each one of these instruments lovingly made by the master. This timple maker crafts these instruments without the aid of any measuring devices, purely using his eye and experience as a guide. Often referred to as the sound of the Canary Islands, the instrument is made from a variety of woods, including mulberry, laurel, and pine. Today, by far the largest town is Arrecife. It has the best natural harbour in the Canaries and gets its name from the long reef which forms a natural breakwater protecting the port. It's been the capital for almost 150 years now, and more than half the island's indigenous population lives here. These beautifully landscaped paths and gardens show off some of the island's flowers and provide a pleasant walk alongside the large lagoon. Not only is Arrecife the main port, but it's also the commercial centre of Lanzarote, with banking, trading and governmental functions all carried out here. At the northern end of Arrecife is Los Marmoles, the main port which both accommodates visiting liners and handles the island's maritime trade. The fishing industry continues to play a major role in the island's economy, with the largest sardine fleet in Spain based here. These boats fish the bountiful seas around the Canaries and also off the North African coast. They bring their harvest back to the salting and canning factories of Arrecife, from whence much of the fish is exported to other parts of Europe and indeed the world. Not surprisingly, plenty of ice is required to keep the fish fresh. Remember, the average lowest temperature in Lanzarote is 17 degrees centigrade in January, rising to a scorching 25 degrees in August. The Church of San Ines is named after the island's patron saint and became the parish church in 1798. A landmark in Arrecife is the Bolas Bridge. This old drawbridge is called Bolas because of the 2 large balls perched on top of it. The bridge separates the town from the spit of land stretching out to the San Gabriel Castle. Today this castle houses the Museum of Archaeology. However, it was built in the 16th century as a fortification against the Berber pirate raids. These invaders would not only sack the towns and hamlets, but also drag the unfortunate inhabitants off to be sold as slaves in Africa. Today the castle stands directly opposite the capital's main street. Arrecife is very much the governmental centre of Lanzarote. This is the cultural department which plays such an important part in bringing to mind the island's rich history and tradition. Although Lanzarote participates in the Canarian government based in Tenerife and Gran Canary, the principal form of local authority is the Insular Cabildo, or island government. The island also has 7 municipalities, each with its own mayor and council. The Cabildo, headed by a president, has as one of its major responsibilities the tourist industry. It also regulates development, ensuring that it complements the natural environment. The Island Council of Lanzarote, which has existed since 1913, has ultimate allegiance to Spain. The president of the Cabildo, however, carries an important responsibility as he presides over the island's government, and every 4 years, he, along with members of the Island Council, must stand for re-election. Here in this tranquil lagoon near the beautiful old quarter of Arrecife, the culture lives on. Traditional songs of the sea and the fishermen sung by one of the most popular folk groups of the island, Amigos de Potanao.
Con primo Marcial yo fui me enrolé y juntos nos fuimos en el Rafael y abajo en la costa nos daba el patrón con gofio y pescado del Mojovito. Pescado en la ñaza de Caraportal, areas morenas y collos también, algún burro, gato y cherné de ley. No se debe comparar clavel con la clavellina. Del río La Güera llegué a Puerto Tierra, echamos para arriba con rumbo al Parquier, con un viaje loco en Caraportal, a tiempo llegamos para el carnaval.
The Castle of San Jose lies just to the north of Arrecife and directly overlooks the entrance to the harbour and town. Today the fortress houses an art gallery, but it used to be known as the Castle of Hunger because of the famine that existed on the island when it was built in 1799. It was commissioned to provide employment for the hungry Lanzaroteans. Inside, the rooms have been transformed by local artist and designer Cesar Manrique, and they now house the International Museum of Contemporary Art, which contains many works by distinguished artists. The castle's halls are also used for a variety of concerts and cultural meetings. As well as viewing the art, on the lower level, there's opportunity to take a break in this magnificent restaurant with its panoramic views across the harbour. At Taiche, built within the lava field, is this unique house. It's the creation of Lanzarotte's international artist Cesar Manrique and is now open to the public.
When I returned to Lanzarote from holiday in New York in the late 1960s, I came to this area with the then president of the island, Pepin Ramirez. When passing this volcanic rock, I noticed its extreme beauty. I decided to look over it very carefully and descended into this volcanic bubble. The space offered by the bubble was large. I realized what an ideal place this was to live and started planning my house immediately. I was also aware of the aesthetic significance of building it here and of its extraordinary beauty. When I was young, I recall going to Famara Beach with my family. It was 7 kilometers long, and when the tide went out, the beach remained like a mirror, in whose reflections one could see all the cliffs of Famara. This was such a fascinating spectacle that it engraved itself on my memory forever. Nature has always enriched my work, and in all my art, it has constantly been a symbiosis of art and nature, nature and art.
The influence of Manrique on the island is quite unmistakable. His passionate belief that development and environment can exist together is abundantly demonstrated by his projects around the island. The spectacular Mirador del Rio looks out to the island of La Graciosa. The monument and house of the rural worker, a tribute to the agricultural workers of Lanzarote, and the spectacular Jameos de Agua. But which is his favorite?
Asking me which is my favorite work is a bit like asking a parent of 5 or 6 children which one is their favorite. I think that for me, all the works I have created on the island are important. But if I was asked to choose one of them which has had the greatest significance to me, then I would have to say the Cactus Garden, because it's my most complete work. Whilst at Jameos, there is a symbiosis between nature and art. At the Cactus Garden, it is art that plays a far more predominant part than nature. I think, therefore, that of all of them, I would have to say that my choice is the Cactus Garden.
In the north is Aria, which is known as the Valley of 10,000 Palms and is where Cesar Manrique now lives. It's a complete contrast to the barren landscape of Tim and Fire. The fertile land is cultivated, and on either side of the valley, the fields are terraced to utilize the ground to the full. Aria was once the second most important town on the island, and up to the end of the last century was a popular spa town, a place where wealthy Lanzaroteans had their holiday homes. The town has a North African look and an atmosphere similar to that of an oasis in the desert. On the coast nearby are the spectacular cliffs of Famara, which cannot fail to impress the onlooker, rising as they do from the sea. Stretching along the coast for over 15 kilometers and in places rising to 600 meters, the cliffs, with their own particular colors, make a breathtaking scene. This spot is very popular for one of Lanzarote's newer sports, hang gliding, and is the venue for international events. The height of these cliffs, as they look northwards out into the Atlantic, causes the moist air from the sea to rise, and very often clouds can be seen crowning the peaks. For this reason, this particular spot receives more than average rainfall, which encourages a localized proliferation of trees and shrubs to grow on top of the hill. This is known as the tiny forest. On average, the rainfall in Lanzarote is 12.5 centimetres per year, but when it does rain, the showers are usually quickly followed by the sun, so losing the full benefit. On one of the highest points stands this little church, Our Lady of the Snows. Although snow has never fallen on Lanzarote, this is a traditional name for churches in Spain, high in the mountains. At the northernmost tip of the island, Manrique has taken this former coastal fortification and created the Mirador del Rio. Here there are unique views of the tiny island of La Graciosa. From this restaurant, by means of its large wraparound window, the vista below can be surveyed. The impression is that of being in a spaceship looking down on the earth. The tiny island of La Graciosa has beautiful beaches and a small population of 500 who earn their living from the sea. Some historians say that this island was the basis for Robert Louis Stevenson's book Treasure Island. Looking inland from the Mirador is the volcano La Carona, which is a major landmark in the northern part of Lanzarote. Pottery is an ancient craft on the island and one which has strong family traditions. Lanzarotean pottery is easily distinguished with its somewhat rustic appearance and light brown finish. Not only pots, but all manner of ornamental figures such as these camels are produced. Almost in the middle of nowhere, near Tinaro, stands the small house of Donna Dorotea, who at over 90 continues the ancient island tradition. It's passed down through the generations. Her great-grandchildren, Alexander and Davita, have already begun to learn their craft, and they too hope to pass it on to their children. Using clay, which is found in the nearby hills of Famara, the potter uses her hands to form the pot. You'll notice that there is no potter's wheel involved in this process. Many years of experience go into this unique method of hand-working the clay, which causes each pot to be unique and genuinely hand-finished. It is the continuance of skills and traditions such as the potter here in Tinajo which gives Lanzarote such a link with its past and which encourages the rich culture of the island to live on. Not only pots, but also small fertility dolls are made. These continue a tradition which takes place between young people of the island when choosing their partner for marriage. When the ceramics are fully formed, they are not fired in a kiln, but outside on an open fire. A collection of twigs and corn kernels is used to provide fuel for the fire. The strong coastal breeze from the northeast trade winds, which blow across the island, provides the draft. After a few hours, the process is complete and more pottery is available to give the visitor a lasting memory of Lanzarote. At the southern end of the island is the quaint little fishing village of Playa Blanca. It was near here that the founding fathers of the island landed in 1402. The fort at Rubicon marks the spot where a Norman knight called Juan de Betancourt arrived with a small fleet of ships to claim it for the throne of Castile. Interestingly, the name Betancourt is quite a common name on the island to this day. Just across the straits from Playa Blanca is the island of Fuerteventura. Although much bigger than Lanzarote in surface area, it's relatively undeveloped and has only a small population. The two islands are connected by a regular hydrofoil and ferry service, taking between 20 and 40 minutes to make the crossing. Playa Blanca is now a major resort. There are all the facilities of a small port, not only for the fishermen, but also for large, luxury ocean-going yachts. In the heart of the village is this quaint little promenade and beach, which make it a quiet spot, retaining all the atmosphere of a Lanzarotean fishing village. Here, not only a place to enjoy all the normal pleasures of the unspoilt beach and pleasant climate, but also some typical scenes representing the true character of the island. Just along the coast from Playa Blanca are the spectacular sandy beaches of Papagayo, considered by some to be the most beautiful in the whole of Spain. The blend of sky, land and sea creates a mixture of colours that is truly beautiful. Papagayo is an experience not to be missed, especially by those who like to get away from it all to enjoy the peace and tranquility that such a place has to offer. Those who prefer to come by sea can board this sailing boat in Arrecife and approach the coast just as Betancourt did nearly 600 years ago. Just around the coast towards Arrecife is Puerto del Carmen. Once a small fishing village, it is today one of the island's main tourist centres. The sandy beaches stretch for 13 kilometres beside the warm waters of the Atlantic and are ideal for swimming. Diving around this coast is particularly good, and there are several diving schools on the island. Above the quaint little harbour are villas built in the traditional style. They look down on the small coastal fishing boats which supply fresh fish to the island hotels and restaurants. The menus abound with local fish, which include sama, vieja and corvina, as well as the more common hake, grouper and sole. Not everyone is fishing seriously, however. Some just for pleasure. For the professionals, however, most of the fish comes straight off the boat to be gutted and supplied for consumption probably that day. Here on the quayside at Puerto del Carmen, a fish is prepared for a local restaurant. No better way than this to enjoy fresh fish. When evening comes, it's time for a visit to the centre of the village, where the local people enjoy one of their traditional games. A relaxing way to end the day before enjoying an evening walk or sampling the delights of one of the local places to eat. This is typical of Lanzarote. The surroundings have not been marred by tourism, making it possible for the visitor to be able to enter into the natural atmosphere of this fascinating island. At whatever time of the day, the island's beauty is apparent. At dusk, across the small fishing harbour, a peace and tranquility pervades, which makes it easy to see why, through history, the Canaries have often been called the Fortunate Islands, or Lands of Eternal Spring. The third major area of tourist development on the island is Costa Teguise. These three areas, Playa Blanca, Puerto del Carmen and Costa Teguise, are the only places where major tourist development has been permitted. This is due to legislation known as the Island Plan, which has kept the effects of tourism contained within set areas and so maintaining the beauty of the environment. The style of the building constructed is also carefully controlled. Traditional architecture is used, the small chimneys reminiscent of North Africa. Inside each of these apartments, there's an individual design concept. However, the exterior maintains the Lanzarotean style. The white paint helps keep the houses cool, and the woodwork is very often green. It's said that this colour comes from the days when a large part of the community was involved in fishing. When the fishing boats had been painted, the leftover paint was then used on the house. In the middle of the modern complex is this charming Lanzarotean fishing village designed by Cesar Manrique. Manrique himself has been very influential in the aesthetic design of these areas of tourist development. Although much of the accommodation on the island is in the form of apartments and villas, first-class hotel accommodation is also readily available. Here's one of the top hotels on the island, Las Salinas, which provides hotel accommodation and facilities that could be expected of a top hotel anywhere in the world. It's here that visiting royalty, international celebrities and businessmen often choose to stay when visiting the island. With a selection of restaurants, luxurious suites and international communications to all over the world, the hotel compares favourably with the highest international standards. It's also the place to come for a holiday where every need can be catered for. In the private grounds of the hotel is a superb swimming pool and a sunbathing area where the island's warm climate can be enjoyed in the utmost luxury. The hotel stands on the site of a former salt pond known in Spanish as Salinas, hence its name. Just outside the hotel is this beach. Surrounded by palms, it makes a wonderful setting for all manner of water sports or for those who prefer simply to soak up the warm Lanzarotean sun. Although the Canaries are best known for winter holidays, the summer months are usually no hotter than elsewhere in Europe, with the winds keeping the temperature bearable. For recreation on the island, there are many opportunities, but one of the most unexpected is this magnificent golf course. Built just to the north of the Costa Teguise coast by a large multinational company, it's been cleverly laid on what was once a barren lava field. There's a flourishing club here who make good use of this remarkable course. Although the lack of rainfall in Lanzarote will not normally support grass as lush as this, the problem has been overcome by building a sprinkler system into the course to provide irrigation. On the north coast of the island, standing on its own, is another quite remarkable sports facility which has now become known the world over among athletes and international sportsmen and women. La Santa Sport stands on the coast and has every conceivable facility for the athlete in training. As well as the lake for windsurfing, there's an Olympic standard swimming pool, gymnasium and full track and field facilities. It's not, however, a place just for the world beater. Many people of all sporting standards come here for an active holiday. The apartments provide comfortable accommodation for the visitor, with the coaching and sports facilities first class. As well as the enthusiastic amateurs, top-class athletes are attracted here by the warm climate. International football and rugby teams, as well as Olympic athletes such as Daley Thompson and Linford Christie, come here to take advantage of the ideal conditions for serious training. Just off the beach at Porto del Carmen are some of the finest windsurfing conditions in Europe. It is to here that international competitors from all over the world come for practice and competition. Lanzarotean food is very much in the Spanish tradition. Here in the heart of Arrecife is a tapas bar. Tapas are a popular part of the local diet, and for the visitor, there's a tasty adventure waiting. Coming in a snack form, they comprise a variety of cooked meat, fish and goat's cheese, accompanied by some olives, onions, cucumber or tomato. It makes a very tasty lunchtime snack. At La Caleta de Famara are several restaurants, one of which is El Risco, owned by Cesar Manrique's brother. This is in a magnificent setting on the northwestern coast, looking out across the Bay of Famara, and, as you would expect, serves locally caught fish as a speciality, complemented by some of the wine produced in the island's vineyards. Although various vegetables accompany the fish and meat dishes, delicious salads are very popular and will often be served. On the wall of the restaurant, as you would expect, an original Manrique. In the center of the island is the monument and house of the rural worker. Not only has this been built as a tribute to the rural workers of Lanzarote, but inside tradition comes alive as the visitor is able to sample some typical Lanzarotean fare. The great advantage here is that the food can be seen on display, and so an interesting choice can easily be made. One vegetable that should be tried is the local crab potato, which is cooked in its skin using salt water, which is all the more enhanced when it's served with a tasty red or green sauce containing garlic, parsley and coriander. In the northeast part of the island, not far from Mameas del Agua, is the pretty little village of Arrieta. Again, it's not surprising that this is a very good place to come to if you want to enjoy some locally caught fish. In the village, there are several very good restaurants for fish, and one of them is the internationally known Bar Miguel. Set on the quayside, it's an idyllic spot to enjoy freshly cooked fish. These restaurants are often quite basic, but they do provide tasty, well-cooked food, which has all the traditional island flavors. The fish can be grilled, fried in breadcrumbs, or fried in batter. There are, however, local nuances added to the food to make the meal so uniquely flavorsome. In the evening, you may like to have a meal in the more formal setting of somewhere like La Bohème in Puerto del Carmen. As well as the local specialities, the menu here would include such dishes as steak or veal. Fish would be the local varieties, and a wide selection of good Spanish and French wines are available. For something less formal and less filling, then the Waikiki Beach Club in Puerto del Carmen could be the place. The atmosphere is romantic and the drinks are exotic. Throughout the day and evening, tasty savory snacks and ice cream is served. At the other end of Puerto del Carmen is Moonlight Bay, which provides the complete evening out. A silver service a la carte or set meal in plush nightclub surroundings. This is followed by international cabaret and dancing into the early hours to round off what will be a very memorable evening. In the wine-growing area at Masdache, the vines stretch for miles in their little pits, sheltered from the wind by the small stone walls. The vines themselves grow in the volcanic cinders, which is known as picon. This is one of the famous bodegas, or vineyards, in the region, and it's interesting to note that this building goes back over 200 years, as shown by the 1775 date on this wall, which was uncovered during renovation work. Old equipment has been preserved as a reminder of the past. The weight of these large wooden beams would bear down on the grapes, causing them to be pressed. Today, a bodega such as this will produce about 300,000 bottles a year. A considerable number of the wines produced on the island are from the Malvasia grape, and their fame has spread around the world with even a reference to them in Shakespeare's Henry IV. The main season for the grape harvest is June and July. White wines are on sale 8 or 9 months after the grape has been picked, whereas red wines require around 18 months to mature. Today, modern techniques are used to produce the wine, with this machinery filling nearly 3,000 bottles of wine an hour in a fully automated process. Lanzarote wine today is internationally recognized and enjoyed by many for its distinct volcanic flavor. Much of the island's culture has its roots based firmly in the agricultural heritage, so where better to enjoy the music of Los Campesinos, which means the farmers, than in the heart of the wine-growing region of La Heria.
El sorondongo de los campesinos al puño negocio y al trago de vino. El sorondongo de los campesinos al puño negocio al trago de vino. Si tú me quisieras, yo me casaría. Mi tierra de Belgia no nos faltaría. El sorondongo de los campesinos al puño negocio, al trago de vino. No tengo camellos, ni cabra, ni vaca, pero tengo en el jable muy buenas patatas. El sorondongo de los campesinos al puño negocio, al trago de vino. Si tú no me quieres, me voy para la prueba. No quiero más novia y siembro la tierra. El sorondongo de los campesinos al puño negocio, al trago de vino. Pero si me quieres, no lo pienses más. Yo toco un vecino, no lo encontrarás. El sorondongo de los campesinos al puño negocio, al trago de vino. Niñas bonitas, se va a terminar y yo lo despido con este cantar. El sorondongo de los campesinos al puño negocio, al trago de vino.
At Tinajo is this magnificent old colonial farmhouse and estate. It's been lovingly restored by a local doctor and his family, who bit by bit are making it just as a farming estate would have been in years gone by. This farm demonstrates the wide variety of Lanzarotean agriculture. One of the main crops here in the past would have been tobacco, but now the Canaries cannot compete with other parts of the world who can produce tobacco much cheaper. Like elsewhere in Spain, the energy of the wind has been harnessed to provide power on the farm. Here, the wind is being used for milling maize. This cereal, known locally as gofio, provided the staple diet for the islanders when they were besieged by pirates in the past. Traditionally, asses and camels have been used as beasts of burden on the island. Although there are a few sheep, it's the goats which are kept for their meat. Known as cabrito, it's very popular. The goats also provide a very tasty cheese, which is enjoyed widely in Lanzarote. Notice that this animal has only one hump and is correctly known as a dromedary. These creatures were brought over from North Africa in the past to serve as beasts of burden on the island. For an island which has so little rain, it's quite remarkable that there's such thriving agricultural activity which contributes significantly to the island's export trade. Some of the traditional methods are still used very effectively today. Here, however, can be seen the secret of Lanzarotean agriculture. It is this layer of pecan, or volcanic dust on the field, that enables what rainfall there is to be protected from the fierce sun and retained in the earth under the pecan. In the same way, the precious early morning dew can be trapped in the ground. When the pecan is moved away to reveal the earth below, it's very noticeable how moist the ground is. Onions constitute the island's largest crop for export. The agricultural activities are very much a family concern where all participate, and the onion harvest is no exception. The larger onions are grown in the Tequize area, whereas the smaller ones grow near San Bartolome, where there is less rainfall. The amount of onions produced is very much dependent on the rainfall, but in a good year the harvest could be in excess of 20 million kilos. The produce is exported to much of northern Europe. Growing in the damp sand which blows across the island are the sweet potatoes. This is the third most important export, and much of it goes to England's West Indian community. There's also a considerable amount of the small crab variety of potato grown on the island. These are not for export, however, but for local consumption, usually cooked in their skins in the traditional Lanzarote way. In the fields near Guatiza is a most interesting form of cultivation, and one which comprises an important and unusual export. It's the cochineal beetle. The beetle was introduced to the Canaries in the last century, having first been cultivated in Honduras and Mexico. The beetle itself lives on the Tunera cactus, or prickly pear as it's otherwise known. It's very small and looks a bit like a deposit of ash on the cactus. In all, there are over 300 acres of cacti on this part of the island, and traditionally it's harvested by the ladies of the family. The white bonnet traditionally denotes the girl is unmarried. Annual production is about 30 tons, and it's exported to Japan, England, France and Italy, where it's used for a variety of purposes. These include use as a colorant in foodstuffs and drinks such as Campari. It's also used as a dye for military uniforms. It may well be that the red in a guardsman's tunic as he stands outside Buckingham Palace has originally come from Lanzarote. In days gone by, maize was a very important crop to the Lanzaroteans. Today, some is still grown to be roasted and then finally ground to make a traditional island food. At Hanubio is the old salt works. The salt is produced by evaporation of seawater, which has been drawn into these ponds. At the end of the last century, over 100 people were employed here when salt was needed to keep a ship's food fresh. Today, the broken windmills reflect the glory of a past era, and production is now down to 15,000 tons annually, which is mainly for local consumption and the fish drying factories of Arrecife. And as another day comes to an end, so too does our visit to this wonderful island. An island where man has sought to work with the environment and to complement it. a place where 200 years ago havoc was wrought by a great power from within the earth. Today that destruction has been translated to a place of idyllic beauty for all to enjoy, a place where the power and the majesty of the volcanoes can be experienced. It's an island too where people with vision like Cesar Manrique have planned the developments in a way which causes them to become one with the environment. His house at Tahiche, a perfect example, built not only on but within the lava field. The design blends completely with the surrounding rock. Another example is the volcanic tunnel at Jameas del Agua. Once derelict and ruined, today it bears witness to the beauty achieved when man works with nature. There are many ways to describe this island. However, no description can match experiencing the atmosphere and beauty of this remarkable place. Lanzarote, Isle of Volcanoes.